la Asociación Mexicana de Facultades y Escuelas de Medicina, la Red Nacional de Educadores en Simulación, la Sociedad Mexicana de Simulación en Ciencias de la Salud, la Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán y el Gobierno del Estado de Yucatán le dan la más cordial bienvenida al 9º Congreso Internacional de Educación Médica, 8º Congreso Internacional de Simulación y 3er Congreso Nacional de Simulación Clínica, a llevarse a cabo del 20 al 23 de mayo en el Centro Internacional de Congresos Yucatán, el más moderno del sureste de México. Esperamos que estos días sean de aprendizaje, networking e intercambio de experiencias para construir juntos el futuro de la salud de México y que estas tierras mayas, que albergan una cultura milenaria, sean el lugar perfecto para conectarnos y sumar nuestro liderazgo para transformar la educación médica. Educación transformadora y socialmente responsable. Innovación curricular, simulación y tecnologías emergentes. Ecosistemas de aprendizaje y práctica del futuro. Excelencia y mejora continua. Iniciamos. Dr. Anurag Saxena, presidente electo del Royal College de Canadá y profesor en la Universidad de Saskatchewan, experto en liderazgo estratégico y gobernanza. Su enfoque sistémico une la filosofía con el pragmatismo para rediseñar la educación médica y las políticas nacionales de salud.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Mi español no es bueno. Gracias por permitirme hablar en inglés. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. Have you ever tried to hold an octopus, a pulpo? It's very slippery. You can never catch it. And did you know that it also has a beak-like thing? It can bite you. So what I wanted to talk to you today is about these two words called complexity and systems. Because as leaders in medical education, when we are trying to do things, it is as if we are trying to catch a pulpo. Many times things move forward, and many times they don't move forward. And I am going to find my clicker to move the slides forward. Just 1 second, I think I forgot that. See, that is one problem with complexity and systems. If you don't plan very well, you can actually make mistakes. And today I had the clicker in my hand, and I have no idea where the clicker is. Okay. Gracias. Okay. So as we talk about complexity and systems, I would like to take you on a journey with me for 2 stories in medical education. I was postgraduate dean in Saskatchewan for 14 years, not by choice, but it just happened. And during that time, we had lots and lots and lots of things to do. I'd like to share with you 2 stories. One, which had to do with implementing competency-based medical education. And the second one, the government asked us to open new sites for family medicine training and specialist training. So I'll talk to you about those 2 stories, and then I'll show you the lessons we learned, some mistakes we made, and things we did well. So we all know that as leaders in medical education or in healthcare, there are different ways of looking at things. There are people who are at the front line, there are people who are in the middle, and then there are people at the apex or the strategic leaders. So depending on where you are, the work can look very different. So this image to me is very powerful because it shows that when you are doing leadership work, then things might be a little bit stable, like the water in front, but you do not know how deep the water is. What's going to happen? Do you have good tools to navigate that? The landscape changes. Sometimes it can be like a forest, and you don't have a map. There is no road, there is no map, there is no compass. So how do you move forward with that? And then there's a little bit of a fog here as well, which can sometimes become very dense, and you cannot find your way through that. So this slide, to me, actually speaks to what leaders have to do and how difficult it is for them to lead a lot of people. If you look at the first image over there, sometimes when we are trying to cross, there would be rocks or stones visible to us, and we can put our feet on that and cross. But we don't know if those rocks are stable or they are not stable, because you put your foot on it and it slips, or you slip and you fall. So that is one problem in leading with complexity and systems. Sometimes when you are crossing a body of water, the water looks calm, like the bluish green part on the top, but you don't know what is underneath. And sometimes it's like a white water and you are absolutely not sure. Most of the time we find ourselves in that situation, but rarely you will find that you cannot see anything. You just don't know what you are supposed to do. So the first point I wanted to make is that in leadership in complex and systems, top-down leadership, saying that this is what we are going to do, telling other people to do, almost never works, and very many times it backfires, and I'll show you some examples of that. Leadership is truly, truly important. We know that leaders can actually save us from disastrous situations. I think you all know the image of that, the New York crash, the plane crash. But we also know that sometimes when things are a little stable, the leaders can become complacent, and they can lead us to disaster. So one important thing for leadership always to keep in mind is the ethical responsibility we have for the people who are with us and the people who we are trying to work for. Because we are talking about complexity and systems, I do want to show you two images, and then we'll move on to the story I want to share with you. We do know that in systems, again, I am very, very fascinated, because when I talk about systems and complexity to many leaders, they have very different ideas. Everybody thinks differently. And nobody has a very good idea as to what a system is, what complexity is. So it took me some time to figure it out, what exactly it is. And of course, this is my understanding, not necessarily shared with everybody. So in a system, like in a plant, you would have things like leaves and branches and thorns and flowers. So those would be the components. And then they will come together. They'll be connected to each other. So that is called like a structure. So components they can create together swamps. So in the middle slide, you have the grass, you have water, you have islands. In a forest, you've got trees and streams like that. But the most important thing is how these things which are connected to each other, how are they interacting with each other? Because they are passing messages to each other, and then they are changing in response to that. So in a system, all this is happening. In a medical education system, you have got people, you've got students, you've got administrators, you have policies, procedures, lots of things going on. So that is how it becomes a system. Let's introduce the word complexity. In complexity, when things are interacting with each other, when they are passing messages and changing in response to that, sometimes new things happen, which you have not anticipated. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that. When a group of people come together, they start talking and a new idea comes up. And that is called emergence. This is the key thing in complexity. Because if you do not know what is going to be emerging, you will tell people what to do, and that is not the best way to move forward. The second thing which happens is these things which are coming up, they tend to cluster together. So people in Canada, in different provinces, in different institutions, they come together. Some people like each other. They like to talk to each other. They come together. Their ideas flourish. But then other people who are not part of that group. So the system actually organizes itself accordingly. I'll show you one slide on that. And the third thing which happens in complexity is what is called adaptability, meaning that a system, like a medical education system, it will adapt to its surroundings. So like a chameleon, it can change its shape, its color, what it's going to do, what it's not going to do, so that it is able to survive. So with that background, I would like to share these stories with you. All of us know that this is a typical organizational chart. We know that. Well, this is, it will be in the dean's office, it will be in the senior administrators, president's offices, everywhere. We think that the organization works like that. But it's not that. It works like this. Right? So it is really who you like, who you don't like, who you want to work with, who are your friends, and things like that, right? So this is the reason medical education system is complex is because people are there. And people will not follow the rules. Even if you give them rules, they will do what they think is in their best interest. Right? So that is the second thing I wanted to pass on to you, is that in a way, people will follow you only if they truly believe that you will help them get where they want to go faster than if they can get there on their own. So this is some of the psychological aspects of leadership. We all know that medical education system is very complex. So this slide is just showing you how complex it is. Within the medical education system, there are many stakeholders. We have a mission, we have a vision, we have a strategy. We don't have enough resources, nobody does. And then our environment is constantly changing, right? There's a context of the macro level. We know what's happening to the world economy. The technology is knocking doors. Everybody is an expert in artificial intelligence. Planetary health, we are all concerned about that. We do know that crisis for human health resources is there. Then there are local political issues, legal issues and all. So remember the slide I showed you, the chameleon trying to adapt itself to the environment? That is what the medical education system is trying to do. And your job as a leader is to transform it and to take it where you think it will best serve the society and the population. So how do you work in a complex system when your rules are not going to be very effective, when people are going to do what they wish to do? So this is what we are going to be talking about today. So I will never forget, about 11 or 12 years ago, I was driving home in my car, and my heart was having lots of palpitations. And the reason was because I had finished a meeting with the dean of the medical school, who had actually called me in his room. I won't tell you the name. We had a revolving door of deans for some time, so you won't know which one I'm talking about. He called me in his room, and for the first time, he did not ask me to sit down. He kept me standing in the room. So I obviously knew something is not right. I thought I was going to be fired. What he told me was that I want you to open a new site for family medicine training, and you're going to put it in the Canadian national matching system. We had worked on 2 sites for about 2 years or so, and I don't know what happened to me at that point in time. I said, no. We are not going to do that because that site is not ready. And the national colleges are coming to accredit the family medicine program. And if they come with a new site which is not working well, the entire program will go down. He was not very happy with that. So essentially, the meeting was that either you're going to do it or I will see you on Monday. So this was a Friday afternoon. On Monday in the afternoon, I get a call from his office, He had been to another city where all the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education is. He had a meeting, he came back, he said, there is no way anybody is going to accept this. You will put this site. I actually got up and I said, I will not resign. I will not put the site, and you can fire me. I still have not recovered from that 12 years later, because the palpitations I had, anytime I would get a telephone call from the dean's office, from the university, from the ministry, from the health authority, it was not an easy thing to do. I will tell you what happened to me. I think I was a little stupid then, but another thing I wanted to pass on to you is that when you're trying to work in systems and complexity, you do need to have some moral courage for what you truly believe in. In trying to navigate a system or complex situations, you will have things like water, land, trajectories changing, water levels rising, new islands appearing and all. You may have a boat and all, but you don't really know what you're supposed to do. You have to be constantly adjusting things, which means you have to be paying attention to what is happening in your surroundings. Because you can run your boat aground. You can take it like this, then you're stuck. You cannot move at all. Or you may not find the right path forward, and you may be keeping going round and round. So when we had to open 8 new sites for family medicine in Saskatchewan, we had to talk to different people. There were cities, smaller communities, where we had to open the new sites. There were people there were mayors, municipalities there. Then there was College of Medicine, which had its own idea on how things have to be done. Then there was government. And then there was mayors, and then there were students. So lots and lots of people who had different ideas on how we have to move forward. The first mistake I made at that time was draw out a process, a 15-step process on how to open a new site. And I shared that with everybody, right? And guess what? It did not move at all, because everybody came with their own ideas, and they said, well, this step cannot be taken because this is a problem. This step cannot be taken because this is a problem. So big lesson for me was that rules are not going to work. So what are we going to do? I did not know this framework at that point in time, but in talking to different people, what we did was we brought people together, and we said, we had one question for them. We said, we want to open a new site in 2 years. How do you think we should do it? So instead of us telling them, they are the ones who told us, well, this is what you are going to do. Second story I want to tell you is implementing competency-based medical education. This is also a very strange story, because in Saskatchewan, when the Royal College was implementing competence by design, the university decided to fire 137 out of 167 doctors they had. So these are our medical educators who university said, you are going to work with us through a contract, but not on a salary. So how do you work with people who you have fired, and then you tell them, come work with us? So that was the other problem we had. So in this situation, it was the same situation that, how will you work with us? Can we give you ownership of what you want to do? You have full autonomy, full control. The only thing we are asking you is get it done in 2 years. That's all we are saying. So this framework, I came to know later on, and I'll share that with you. Because in a complex, now you know what is a complex system, and you also know what is a complex adaptive system, meaning it is constantly changing in response to the environment. This is a very, very helpful framework. It's pronounced Cynefin. It comes from Wales. It's developed by a professor from Harvard. His name is Dave Snowden. You can look it up. Cognitive Edge is the site. Very, very helpful. What the idea here is, that in any system, there are 4 areas. First, which is a very simple one, where you know that if you do this, this will be the outcome, right? So here, you can have rules. It's okay, you can have rules. But then, there's a second area which is called complicated. Here it means that there are multiple pathways. You do this, that happens, you do this, that happens. They can all get you to the same place. Like when I was coming to Merida yesterday, I was flown from Saskatoon to Vancouver to Mexico City and to Merida. But I could have taken a different route, like Saskatoon, Toronto, Cancun, Merida. I could have done any of those things. So in a complicated system, there are multiple ways, but you have to figure out which is the right way, right? So here is where the experts come in. So your medical educators, your experts, they will come and they'll tell you, well, you know what, of all these different things, this is the right way to do it. That's what is complicated. And then we have the complex. And you remember that organizational chart with the people there, right? Nobody knows what is the right way to move forward. And you will only know once you have finished that what you did was right or was it not right, right? So in complex situations, which I would submit to you that most of the medical education is, you have to bring people together, give them opportunities to come up with the ideas, give them resources to do it, and give them pride in their work so that they feel that I created it. Next thing I want to pass on to you is I learned in a very, very hard way that when you are a leader, you almost feel that you are in charge and you're responsible for everything. And then sometimes people will say, oh, you know, this person did that person did that, but really it's the people who do the work. So one of the challenges for leaders at any level is to actually step back. Step away, don't interfere with what people are doing, let them do it, you still hold them accountable, but you let them do the work and give them the freedom. But there's one place called chaos, whereas COVID-19 is one example, and there are lots of things which can happen when you're in a crisis, but then you have to do something to stabilize the system, and then you can move on to other places. Now, before I leave this slide, I want to tell you one thing, is that you see that obvious and chaos are together. So you can think like obvious zone being like a big cliff. Your rules are working very well. But if you are enforcing your rules in a very strict manner, people don't like it. They will only follow it to some degree, and things can fall into chaos very, very quickly, right? So this is not like a one-dimensional diagram, but it's like a cliff which can fall into chaos. I'm not going to talk to you about these two things because everybody knows that without trust, you cannot talk to anybody, right? Without safety, people will not talk to you, right? So it goes both ways. So with this, I'm going to give you now examples of the two stories, what we did. When you're talking about systems leadership, and again, I want to draw your attention to the example I gave of the octopus or the pulpo. It's very, very difficult to navigate through that. There are hundreds of things you can do, but I'll give you just 3 examples to you. The first one is, you have to be able to see both from the highest level, what is happening in my system. So when we were trying to implement competency-based medical education at 18 different sites, I had to know what is happening, what is the lay of the land here, what does it look like? But then I also had to know what is happening at each individual site of training. So sitting in the College of Medicine centrally in Saskatoon, nobody was going to accept what I was going to say. So I had to actually drive and make appointments with people, spend time with them, have lunch together, maybe go for a walk in the evening, and see what exactly is going on. So you need to know both things at the same time, the big picture, and then what is happening at the smallest possible level. And that requires a lot of time and a lot of energy. I went to one site, it's called North Battlefords. I thought I was doing a good job. Hey, I'm here, I want to meet with you, you're giving me time, and I know the questions to ask you. I asked them a question. What do you think the College of Medicine should do to help you open this site? Their answer almost killed me. The answer was, get out of my way. Right? So we don't know what people actually are thinking. When you give them ownership, when you give them freedom, they will have ideas and they may perceive you very differently. You may think that you are supporting them, but they feel that you are in your way. Right? So which means that when you're having trust and safety and honest conversations with people, really you have to pay attention to what they are saying. It is not what I want, it is how can I support you in what you want to see happen here. Right? So that is a very important thing, and lots of ideas will come up, and also it's a tendency for big leaders to come and say, well, of these different ideas, this one idea I like. No, that's not the right way to do it. They have to choose the right idea to move forward, because if they have built it, they will carry it forward. Right? So we had to get out of the way of that particular place, and they did it in their own way. We do know that in trying to work in medical education, you have to work across many boundaries: departments, programs, deanery, common people, faculty, Ministry of Health, Health Authority, hospital, everywhere. How do you work across boundaries? Because everybody, every place has got their own mandate, they have their own vision, they have their own mission. Why would they work with you? And nobody is a follower, everybody is a leader. So it is very, very important, how do you bring people together so that you're all pulling the rope on the same side and not pulling it in 100 different directions, right? So this also is very, very critical as to how you work across boundaries. One way to work across boundaries is to actually tell people that this is something we can achieve only if we work together. Alone, you cannot achieve. So if people truly believe that working together will get us somewhere, they will work together. If they believe that, no, I can do it on my own, they will not be with you, right? So you have to spend time trying to find that area where collectively, that's the only way you can do it. I am sure all of you have read a lot about collective leadership, about distributed leadership, about collaborative leadership. These are the buzzwords in leadership these days. But how do you actually practice that? What does it mean? When you have good meetings, when you meet with people together, you feel good about it, you have good discussions, you agree to certain things, and then you go back to your own organizations. And then you do your own things. So how do we actually bring things together? Okay? So in this particular case of opening a new site for family medicine training in Saskatchewan, what we had to do, you can imagine trying to get a minister of health to come to a meeting. It's not an easy thing. You cannot even get a meeting with a minister of health, let alone invite him to a meeting. So it took us about 5 or 6 months to get the minister to come to a meeting. The dean was there, the health authority was there, the registrar from the College of Physicians were there. We have a lot of these people sitting together, and we said, this is what we are doing. How are we going to work together? And how are you going to actually make sure that you do what you said you will do? They ended up signing a document in the end. And we had a timetable, and they agreed, and they did things that, okay, we will give you this much more money. So we were asking for like $2 million, and we got $1 million, which is not bad. And then, Health Authority opened us some new sites. They gave us some new doctors for working in the Health Authority system. So like that, only if people come together and they agree, only then you can move forward. So again, I'm trying to remind you of the octopus analogy of the pulpo, is that it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of toll on the leaders. So this is what we have done so far, that in systems leadership, you have to be able to see the big system, and then you have to be able to see the little things. You have to be able to genuinely work with people and come up with conversations. And finally, you have to be able to lead across the boundaries. So with that, let's make it complex now. In complexity, there are different ways of looking at things, but I'll draw your attention to a few things. We have also heard that organizations should be flat, power is not good, authority is not good, but we do know the reality of organizational life. Power is not going anywhere. Authority is not going anywhere. It will be there. It's just a question of how do we work with power, how do we work with authority, right? So you have to be able to use power and authority in a manner that is supportive of the people, but also get the results done. So, in trying to implement competency-based medical education, with the people who were fired, we actually created working groups and said, these are the areas you're going to work. So you will work on resources, you will work on simulation, you will work on educational administration, you will work on curriculum. You do what you want, we will give you all the resources you want. But you have to finish everything by 30th June. Right? So they knew that there was a timeline there. They would have the resources, the autonomy, but it is not that I can do it whenever. Right? So that is the appropriate use of power and authority. Of course, you have to achieve results, because if you're only talking about vision, you're always talking about, well, we're going to get there. Well, people will get tired of that, right? Because they want to see concrete actions of the results. So make sure that the people you're working with see that the results they achieved actually are beneficial. I'll give you one example here. As postgrad dean, we used to do lots of surveys of our postgraduate residents. And we say, well, you know what? How are things with you? How is your learning environment? And are things getting better? How is your feedback and things like that? And we had 500 residents, and maybe 15 will fill it out, right? So that's a very poor response rate. So what we did was, when 15 people filled it out, we said, this is what you told us. And then we made changes. And then in the next survey, we said, this is what you told us, this is what we did, please let us know more. So gradually, people started trusting that, if I say something, maybe action will occur, right? So people need to know that they are being heard and the results are being achieved. And of course, this is the accountability thing, is that as operational leaders, as deans, postgraduate deans, CEOs, you have to make sure that people are accountable, they are doing what you think they should be doing. This really is a second component of complexity, which I find very, very difficult, is letting people do what they want to do. They have ideas on what they want to do. So you have to create spaces for that, but it cannot be free for all. It cannot be, well, I want to do this, this, and that, because you may not have resources for that, or it may not be aligned with a vision and mission. It may not be aligned with societal responsibilities. So how do you do that? And that really comes to this third component of complexity leadership. What this means is, as a leader, you will step back. I told you that earlier. So when we created those 9 or 10 groups for implementing competency-based medical education, I had to step away. It was not easy for me. It was very difficult. I needed to know what is happening. What are they talking about? Is the plan on place? Is it going to be done in time or not? But really, I had to step away. And more they felt the safety that they could come up with things, the more they worked together. So this is the other hardest thing for leaders to do, is step away and trust the people that they're going to be doing. Especially when your dean above you is asking, what's happening here? What's happening here? So it's a question of balancing your bosses and giving freedom to the people who are working. So how do you get people to do the work? Well, you cannot just tell them, hey, go do this, and they will do it. You have to introduce some tension. You have to introduce something so that people feel compelled to do the work. So in this particular case, for opening the new sites, we actually introduced tension. We said that two of you want to open the new site for family medicine training because you think new residents can come and your society, your community will be served. But then these are the two groups of people who are concerned about the accreditation, and they feel that if they open the new site, then accreditation will fall apart. So now we are putting you, 6 of you together, 3 from one side, 3 from one side, in the room together. Now you figure it out. How can we open the new site and maintain accreditation? And you know what? It was surprising because they came up with an idea. They came up with answers. So that is how we moved ahead. So the idea in working is introduce tension. Second thing we did, everybody is looking to the postgraduate dean's office. Well, I want to do this, and they come and talk to me. Or they send me an email, or they send me a memo. And then my office has to put it all together and send it across to people. So I have now become a bottleneck. What we did, we said, whatever you talk to each other, don't come to us. You can talk to each other. You don't need my approval. You don't need any permission. Just talk to each other. Okay? You want to travel to one site? We will give you money to travel. You want to rent a car? We'll give you money to rent a car. So essentially, the idea was create flows so that people can talk to each other without coming to you. Right? Then they feel more empowered. And the third thing, however, again, it is you have to put the guardrails. Guardrails meaning, well, you can only do this much, you can only do in this particular time, otherwise they can go off. Everything is not easy. It may seem that this is easy, but it is not easy at all. Very, very difficult. And I want to show you one example here. Because you have stepped back, you don't really know what actually is happening in those groups. So I'll give you one example here. I had the trust with one person, and I said, well, you know what? Your job is to now go to different departments and give a grand round on competency-based medical education and do this, this, and that. So you do that, I'm not going to do it. To my horror, one day, one of my fellow associate deans, he said, Anurag, do you know what is being said in those grand rounds? I said, no. I think he's just working to move the project ahead, and we're going to do that. He said, no. What he is saying is that do not work with a postgraduate dean unless he gives you this, 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 and that. So, which was very, very problematic for me as to, I trust you, we are doing organizational work, and here you go, and you are destroying the whole project. So the idea in complexity and systems is also that you have to have a mechanism to know what is going on, what the conversations are. You cannot just step back and go home and sleep. You really have to have a mechanism to know what is happening. Trusted people, it is not gossip. It is not like talking negatively about people, but you need to know what is truly happening. So this is what we have talked about complexity leadership, is that operational means formal leaders, you still have to use power and authority. You still have to get the things done. You still need to hold people accountable. Entrepreneurial means letting people enjoy, let them do the work, let them come up with ideas. But then enabling means you create conditions so that they can work and they can bring up ideas together. So this is the struggle I had. Government wanted new sites opened, 8 new sites in 4 years, like unheard of. How can you open 8 new sites in 4 years? Royal College wanted these new programs should go competence by design by this, and this time. So if you are working in complexity and systems, well, two things are pulling you in two different directions. One, you want to get things done in time. But the other thing is, if you want to give freedom to people, well, they need time. They are going to come up with new ideas, and you don't know which idea is going to work. So there's a tendency to pull you apart. And I can tell you, I lost a lot of sleep at night because things were just going in 100 different directions. And it took me a lot of time to learn around that. So you really have to bring together efficiency and adaptability. Remember we talked about the adaptability in the beginning, the complex adaptive systems? You have to bring them together. The only way you're going to work in complex adaptive systems is through relationships. Remember when we talked about systems earlier, the components, the structure, and the organization, which really is how the interactions are happening. And in complexity, the interactions can change. There is no guarantee that if I have a conversation with you today and we are good, the next one is going to be the same way, especially if we disagree on things. Right? So the other thing I want to pass on to you is, which I learned from another dean, is that if your conversations with people have not gone well, if you have disagreed, if there's a conflict, do not end the meeting on that note because you value the relationship. You should always give 3 to 4 or 5 minutes or whatever time it takes, honestly, to say, you know, I truly value you. We may not see eye to eye on this one. We may disagree, but there will be opportunities for us to work together later on. Because of this issue, we are not going to destroy our relationship. So that I found very, very useful, and I just wanted to pass that on to you because it requires you keep your calm, you don't let anger get to you, and you work nicely with people. And I gave you the story of the moral courage as well, and I do want to tell you, when I told you the palpitations I was getting in my heart going back after the dean's meeting, I don't know if I truly was exercising moral courage. I think in my heart, I was somewhat naive. I thought, well, I could take this position, and it's all good. But somewhere in my heart, I believe that the dean will actually protect me. I have a good relationship with the dean. He trusts me. He has appointed me. And, he cares about what I think. Which really happened because he did protect me. I did not get fired. I wouldn't be here today if I did. And then the third thing was, I also truly, truly believed in the purpose of medical education, which is we are going to provide highest quality education to our new learners to serve the society. So again, it was a combination of some stupidity, some belief in my boss, and some purpose belief that, this is what we are there for. So in trying to, this is my last slide, maybe one more of that, is in trying to work through complexity and systems, you do not want to do things always in rules. You also do not want to create like a plantation, like everything looks same. And there is no creativity, there is no innovation, there's no imagination. So you do not want to create like a plantation. It requires a lot of effort on the part of leadership to maintain that plantation. Keep cleaning it up all the time and, keep it clean, straight and all, looking pretty and all. So that's not the way we want to do it. At the same time, we also do not want to do something whereby anything goes, It is like a dense forest. You cannot find your way through it. People are doing whatever they are doing. It never comes together towards the purpose you want to do. So what I have understood it's like cultivating a garden. Right? So it is essentially, you do have some order, you do have some paths here and there, but really what you're trying to do is create pockets of innovation and imagination. Okay? So this is my last slide. Dr. Ramon asked me that there should be something practical and not just up there. So what I would like to suggest to you is that if you're a leader, first job is to figure out where you are. Are you in that one of those four zones? Are you simple, complicated, complex, or chaos? Then that will decide what action you want to do. The second one is senior leaders, despite all the dialogues in the world literature on leadership, power and authority are real. Please do not give it away. Use it responsibly. Another task for you would be, when the people come up with new ideas, then I think you should try and bring it into the mainstream, into the main strategy of what you're trying to do. That's the second thing. The third thing is, you do know that many times we give awards to people because they accomplished something, right? This leader did this leader did that, and that's how we reward people. But how about the people who actually created conditions for the success of others? How about those leaders who actually stepped back and they said, well, you know what? You guys come up with the answer. I think one of the Chinese philosophers, Lao Tzu, said that the ultimate leadership is when people say, we did it on our own, right? So you are not even there. So I think that's the third thing, is that please think as senior leaders, how can you reward people who are practicing enabling leadership? Okay? Mid-level leaders, I think the most important thing for operational leaders would be to step away, let people do the job. However, set the boundaries, introduce the tensions so that you can get the work done. And finally, for frontline leaders, I think you should allow people to do small work, test it, but never do it alone. So this is my last point, is your senior leaders, your people above you, should never be surprised. You should always keep them informed, because surprise leaders are not good leaders. Okay? So you have to make sure that you're working with your senior leaders, and that's all I wanted to tell you. Thank you so much. Okay. Muchas gracias.
You can join us on the stage.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saxena, for this amazing conference. Okay. On behalf of the Mexican Association of Faculties and Schools of Medicine, we give you this reconnaissance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He's my vice president.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Young is the.
Right.